and welcome to 6 Feet Apart with Chris and Allison. I'm Allison.
I'm Chris.
And this is Jimmy. He is our resident case expert, and today he's going to take you through a couple of Case's early machines. So take it away, Jimmy.
Today we're going to talk about this machine right here, which is an Apron Thresher. This was one of the early threshers that Case made, and it really combines a couple major machines that revolutionized wheat harvest. So up front, you have a spike tooth cylinder and a concave, and it's really just pieces of metal that pass by each other. The cylinder spins, and then as the grain is fed in, it separates the kernels from the wheat part, and it uses a mechanical force to beat them out. Prior to this, it was a really, really labor-intensive process to separate the grain from the wheat. They used either a flail and with the wheat on the ground, and you would take and hit it, and mechanically, you would make a mess, and it went really slow. Either that, or they actually ran horses over it and treaded the kernels out. This really revolutionized the way that wheat was harvested and separated. So the spike tooth cylinder was what J.I. Case brought with him from New York. It was really just this front groundhog thresher part that he brought with him, sold some on the way, kept one to experiment with in Rochester in 1842 and improve upon. And this machine combines the threshing portion with the fanning mill portion, which is back here. This has a fan that goes around and it blows the chaff, all the small parts, away from the kernels. Above here is an apron that runs and moves the straw through. The reason this is called an apron thresher is because it has this apron in here. It's really what changed a lot over the years with threshing machines when they went from the apron thresher to the eclipse thresher and later to the agitator. This machine in particular has been in Racine a really long time. The Case company actually bought it back around 1930. They found it at that point in time. They thought that this was the only apron thresher that was left in the whole country. So probably one of a kind here. I don't know of another one that has surfaced since then. The Case company had it for numerous years, and then the museum got it 20 years ago, something like that. It's in amazing shape. You can still see all of the hand stenciling that was on it. You can see all of the original paint. Nobody repainted it. I believe the Case company used it for a demonstration in the 1940s. That was probably the last time that it's been run. Yeah. This is the drive side of the agitator. This is where the power comes in. Early threshers were powered by horses. It wasn't until later on when they added other features to threshers or made them bigger that you needed to have steam engines and a greater power source. Something like this could easily be powered by 4 horses on a horse sweep or something like that. You can tell this one was set up for horses as opposed to steam engines because it has this really old universal joint, which would have been driven by a shaft that went in here. If this was a machine that was designed for steam engines, it would have had a belt pulley here. Now, looking through the early Case catalog from about this time where they offered both horse sweeps and also steam engines, there was a little bit more to it than just swapping the drive mechanism if you were going to change over a machine, because a lot of farmers did upgrade. You'd actually have to change out the cylinder because they offered a heavier cylinder shaft or a heavy cylinder to be able to handle the extra power coming from a steam engine. But this one looks like it's all original. It's exactly the way it was set up for being powered by horses. The next thing we're going to go look at is the horse sweep, which would have been a power source for this.
There's a wheel spoke in there, I think, or something.
Sounds like tools.
That's a cylinder or a concave tooth, one of the two. It must be really, it's an odd shape though. Normally they're really flat like that.
If you could shine your light in there again, I can get, there we go.
This is where the finished grain would have come out of the threshing machine. There's actually a port on both sides, so when it was bagged, one person could be bagging over here, and then when this bag was full, the other person on the other side could do it, and there's just a little divider in here that you can flip, and it changes which way the grain would flow out. Really, really simple, as are most parts of this machine. Wasn't terribly complex. This is kind of a neat little feature. This is what they would have used for keeping track of how many bags they did. So there's 10 little holes up, and you could just put your peg in and keep track of how many bags you did. This was long before they had any gravity boxes or were doing any quantities. Everything that came out of this machine went into a bag that was then hand sewn and piled into a wagon. It took a lot of people to run a threshing crew. You'd have a bagger on each side. You'd have somebody up front who was hand feeding all of the bundles of wheat in. You'd have people out in the field that were collecting them and bringing them in. You'd have somebody else who was building the stack. You'd have somebody else running the horses. It was really, really labor intensive. There's a reason they refer to it as a threshing crew, because it really did take a lot of people. We've come a long way since then. Now you can just take a combine, drive down the machine, you've got a driver, you've got somebody in a semi, and they can just haul it all right away. But this was a great improvement over what they had before with the groundhog thresher, or certainly with flailing or treading. This is a dinghy Woodbury horse sweep. This is one of the options for powering a machine like a threshing machine. There would have been a couple of options for turning horsepower into mechanical power for powering a machine. One would have been a horse tread, where the horses would have stood in place and the conveyor belt underneath them would have moved. They were generally for just one or two horses. They didn't provide a huge amount of power, but certainly enough for a groundhog thresher or a small machine. If you needed a lot more power, you really had to go to something like a horse sweep, where the horses walk in a big circle and you can put a lot of horses. This one's actually designed for 12 horses, 6 teams of 2. So from each of these pockets would be one of these poles that would extend out, and it would be anchored back to this giant bull gear, and then the top would come off this, and the horses would walk in a giant circle around this in teams of 2. And these were available from, I want to say, 8 horses up to a 16 horse sweep. And so it would be matched to the size of the machine that you bought. If you bought a giant thresher, you're obviously going to need a lot of horses, so you're going to need a giant horse sweep. This one being a 12 horse, it really covered the average range for most of the machines. And then again, it depended on what you had for extra features on your thresher and how much power you needed. This would take the rotary action of the horses walking around the circle. It would take and turn this big giant gear, which is all cast iron. This whole thing is amazingly heavy. It would transfer that through the pinion gears, and there's a pinion gear on the top and on the bottom underneath here. And this was really what made it the dinghy Woodbury one as opposed to the previous versions of horse sweeps, this gear assembly in here. Case sold a lot of these. This one dates from about the 1880s, I want to say. This version came out mid-1880s and was around into the early 1900s when tractors, steam engines then got really common and they replaced them. Okay. To get the power from the horse sweep to the machine, there's a shaft that comes out on the bottom, comes off of this big transverse gear that's in here, and it would all be shaft drive. So here's an example of the shaft. This one's actually inside of a box so that when the horses walked, you could mound the dirt and the horses would walk over it and not be spooked. But you would take shafts that are a good 1.25 inches like this and couple them all the way from the machine, from the horse sweep to the machine you were powering. So it would take a huge number of shafts, and they actually used a lot of these very old universal joints to accommodate any of the fluctuations that might be in the ground or any of the unevenness that it needed to go. For more information on early case history or on case history in general, I recommend a few books. This is Machines of Plenty. This was published in 1955 and then reprinted back in the 70s. Great book, easy to read, wonderful resource. It is out of print now, so you kind of got to search and find an old copy to be able to read. This book is actually available from the museum. This book was published in 1992 for Case's 150th anniversary, and if you call the museum, available from the gift shop there. This is Old Abe's News. I'm the editor for this magazine. It's published by the JI Case Collectors Association. It comes out quarterly. It's subscription-based, membership-based, so go to our website, www.jicasecollector.com, to find out all of the membership information. Otherwise, there'll be a picture of the form in the pictures that go along with this video.